Majo John Madden in my camper van in the Boca del Rio. I'm calling it a suburb. They don't use the term suburb in Mexico. It's part of Veracruz, but Boca del Rio is a super affluent section south of the city. I think it's in the city limits still. It's got the fabulous beaches and fabulous, super expensive hotels. I've been here 2 weeks today. I arrived in Veracruz the night before, on New Year's Eve night, and I wasn't sure they celebrated New Year's Eve in Mexico, but when I first pulled over in Veracruz, I'd been sitting there about a minute, and I couldn't get my video camera out fast enough to get a good video. But what came by me was a big pickup truck with huge Bluetooth speakers blaring wonderful music, and 10 big swarthy guys dressed in drag dancing down the street. Later on that night, I managed to find my way back to a big open-air concert dance with amazing music and great dancing. Oh, I had fun. But 2 weeks ago, I came up to this section because I wanted to get to a beach where I could walk on the beach and swim and stuff. And the water tends to be rough here. There tends to be a lot of chop. And one day, Friday night is motorcycle night here. This is my third Friday night. And part of what I love about this is that in this bastion of conformity and polish, and you look good and wear the right clothes and ride the right expensive bicycles, Friday night is motorcycle night. There's a whole bunch of motorcycle folks partying back over there. They do that every Friday night. And I don't know where the riders start, but they come roaring by here starting at 10 o'clock, and now it's about midnight. So that's kind of exciting. The context for the video I'm about to talk came from like right over there, right next to the Punta Azul hotel. Wonderful, expensive hotel with very snooty, very snobbish guests. There is a gate where you can get down to the beach, and there are 3 different outfits that do outdoor training, kayaking and snorkeling, but down here especially kayaking. And of the 3, 2 of them seem quite establishment and probably expensive. But, oh, there's this motorcycle going yet. Look at this. Look at this. Look at these motorcycles. Holy cow. Both directions. Look at this. Wow, this is exciting. That's very exciting. I have a good story about motorcycles. My first year on the road, at the end of March, it'll be 4 years I've been on the road. The first year was up in Appalachia. I had been living in the very hip, progressive mountain city of Asheville, North Carolina, on the spine of the Blue Ridge Mountains. I think the busker capital of the U.S., full of artists. And I'd been there less than a year when I said, if you've got an artistic bone, a creative bone in your body, it's going to get activated in Asheville. And that was the first time I called myself a writer. It was my first of 16 years in Asheville. And I wrote like crazy while I was there. And now on the road in the last 3 years, I've turned into a videographer. And on TikTok, I had almost 1,000 followers and would have videos viewed by 1,000, 1,500 people. I'm all on YouTube now because people my age don't look at stuff on TikTok. And I wanted to have a broader audience, and everybody gets onto YouTube. But I don't have anywhere near the level of followers. So in my first year on the road, I was up in deep Appalachia, the high mountains of Appalachia in western North Carolina. And I had been trained as a good progressive elite to dislike and fear the men of Appalachia, the rednecks. And what I discovered very quickly was that they were a bunch of wonderful, wonderful men, good people, innocent, sweet. But I still had some fear of motorcyclists. And I used to hang out at a general store it was about 2,000 feet up the side of Roan Mountain. That's 6,700 feet, something like that, right on the North Carolina-Tennessee border. And one Saturday morning, a whole bunch of motorcyclists roared in. And before I got a look at them, look at this, what's coming now? Holy cow. Holy cow, this is so exciting. This really fits. It really fits. The theme I want to talk about is getting wild and becoming a wild person, activating your wild side. And this is the perfect backdrop for it. Oh Lord. There's a lot of motorcycles. Veracruz has violated all my expectations of Mexico. He did a wheelie. I've never seen a part of Mexico that is as affluent as Boca del Rio. And certainly this whole motorcycle thing is really, really something. They just keep coming. Wow. How many motorcycles here? Veracruz is a big physical fitness place. In the mornings, between 5 and 7, before this road gets busy, this is the main road along the Gulf of Mexico here, there will be hundreds of people on bicycles, and they will take one of the two lanes going north, going south there, they're going south, and then going back north. And a couple weeks ago on a Sunday morning, there was some kind of a road run that had hundreds of people here on a Sunday morning in the rain. In the rain. Wow. It's going to be hard for me to talk about me with all that. Okay, now here's a break. So, what got me thinking tonight about the whole theme of wildness is that of the 3 companies that do outdoor training, kayaking training down on this beach, one of them is what I call the hippie company. They are Conoce Veracruz. Encounter Veracruz is their Facebook page. And my first encounter with the woman who I kind of have the hots for, really very taken with, was over there. There's the gate where you have to lift up the gate to get down to the beach. And I was walking by, and her buddy unlocked the gate so that it would go up, and she sat on it and rode up on it. I thought, oh my God, who is this woman? I have to know her. And this morning, they were back, and one of the other outfits that was down on the beach today also has a beautiful Jeep, very expensive new Jeep that they pull the kayaks. This outfit pulls the kayaks behind a 94 Volkswagen bus, yeah, which she drives. So she was up here this morning while her buddy had the kayakers out, and she was sitting in her Volkswagen bus, just 2 cars up there, right where that car is. And I wanted to see her again. I had chatted with her a little that first day. Not enough. I was surprised that she remembered me, but she sure did. So she was sitting in the bus doing something with her phone, and I went and sat on the seawall and had a cigarette over there. And she looked out and saw me and gave me a big wave. And then the next vision I had an hour later was her on top of the van with binoculars surveying the ocean, looking for the kayakers to come back. So we had an amazing visit, and she took a selfie with us cuddled up real close. And I'm looking for a mechanic for my car because it's broken down right now. And she says, you got a mechanic for it? And I said, well, he didn't show up yesterday and we're trying to reach him today. And she says, I got a good one. I said, I bet you do with that vehicle. My vehicle before this, my first camper van, was an 88 Ford Econoline. 88 Ford Econoline with the infamous Ford 5-liter engine. It would run like a son of a gun, do 100 miles in the mountains easy. That was a hell of a car. Big high top, the old hippie van, the Scooby-Doo van. Oh, it set off a car alarm over there. I hope that shuts up. So I had a lot of fun with that van, but it also was a dreadful amount of problems, as this car has been too recently. So she gave, and so the WhatsApp number for the mechanic that was supposed to show up yesterday just didn't answer. Finally, I reached Lady, that's her name, is Lady. And she's a big strapping woman, kind of cute, not, magazine beautiful, but really so physically alive and so emotionally and energetically alive that I'm quite taken with her. So I've been thinking of her as a wild woman, and I got to talking with one of the waiters at the restaurant down there tonight about her. He knows her, and he says she is such a fascinating person. Her whole presence radiates this is a different person. So I've had a fantasy conversation with her earlier tonight where she says, well, do you think you can run with a wild woman? And I said, I think I could document that. I think I've got the cred. My background is as a psychologist, 20 years, PhD clinical psychologist. And when I left college, I turned down a 4-year scholarship to medical school in order to take time to find myself. But then instead of moving to Haight-Ashbury, which was my original idea, and become a true hippie, I buckled. I blinked. I married a woman very much like my mom and stayed in Chicago and went back to grad school and got a PhD in psychology. But I was a student radical there and really big rebel the whole 4 years of grad school. But went on and after 20 years in psychology, got a management consulting job at AT&T, then the largest company in the world. And there's a book. I don't know how this is gonna work. There's me. It's probably enough of me. There's a book about all the student radicals who did exactly what I did. Put on a dark blue suit and went into corporations trying to change the world from within, and that's definitely what I was up to. Organization development is the people side of business, teamwork, coaching of managers, speaking truth to power, supporting the staff, telling the truth to the manager, and me earning the trust of the manager and holding his feet to the fire, so that, usually him, so they will actually listen to what people are saying. And it was exciting work. I had a huge spiritual experience 4 years ago and dropped a whole huge load of emotional pain I had been carrying from childhood wounds, sex abuse and stuff. Just dropped it in an instant and became happy. And a few months later got a camper van, took to the mountains, left Asheville behind. I had a subsidized senior apartment right in the heart of fabulous downtown Asheville, which I hated because I already kind of knew I was a country guy, but I've really discovered it since. And when the COVID hit, I left Asheville, packed up my car, and took with me only what I could get in my little mini SUV and went to the mountains. Now, part of what really electrified and activated my wild side was I've been a friend of homeless people for a long time, and had a year before taken into my apartment for 2 months a friend from church who was living out of his car. And that relationship became a great friendship, wonderful buddy relationship. and we did some great stuff together, exploring the mountains. In, I guess it would have been January of 2000, before we knew about the COVID. Asheville, I like to say, is the busker capital in America, and I'm a big dancer, and I love to hang out around buskers and dance to their music, regardless of what they're playing. And I heard a blues guitarist from at least a block away, where I ran towards that music. I said, I gotta find out who this is. And it was a big, strapping black guy whose name is Eric Freeman, the Carolina Blues Boy. I think you can find him probably on Facebook. At one point you could. And it was his first day in Asheville, having left New Orleans, where I had never been, but now I know New Orleans really well. And he never would talk about why he had to leave New Orleans, but he had. And he was finding his way there. And I a little bit kept in touch with him, but a month later I approached him with the idea of putting on a flash mob downtown where he would be playing his guitar. And it was for a special cause. And some of us would start dancing to his music, and we actually did that. But at that point, Eric had become homeless. He had been renting a room from a guy in the projects in Asheville who was not legally allowed to rent out rooms in his place. And Eric one day got found out being there and was thrown out, and that night slept in the parking garage. And I encountered him the next day. And I called my friend Tom and said, Tom called me crazy. He's older than I realized. I had him being in his 30s. He's 49. He's tougher than I realized. He's lived a lot of his life on the street. But I think he's got a good heart. I trust this guy. I want to take him into my apartment. And I did. And out of that came one of the great buddy relationships of my life. Eric really tapped and excited my wild side. And second or third night he was living with me, he had a gig out in the mountains playing blues in some club. And he didn't have a car, and I drove him out there. And there's a very twisty mountain road there. And I drove, and I did creditably. I didn't have anybody piled up behind me. But when we left, I was super tired. And Eric said, you're too tired to drive. Give me the keys. So I did. And he went from 0 to 60 in about 8 seconds in my little SUV. And I never got scared. And I said to him, I'm not worried. I trust. It's obvious you know what you're doing. How'd you learn how to drive like this? And he said, I used to be a professional race car driver. Now, call me racist, but when a homeless black guy says to you he used to be a professional race car driver, you're not sure you believe it. But it was true. He had grown up rural, poor, in I think West Virginia, and went to community college and got a degree in automotive mechanics and rebuilt a car and raced it professionally. And he taught me, he said, on these mountain roads, the trick is, no, he didn't tell me. I figured it out later when I was in the mountains, and I confirmed it with him. I said, the trick is let up just before you hit the curve and then jam it down when you're in the curve because it'll give you extra traction. He says, yeah, that's it. And it really works. I've used it ever since. So, but then we got into the city of Asheville, and it was about 11 at night. And I said to Eric, you know, Eric, I was so comfortable with you driving so fast out in the mountains. I'm honestly not comfortable with you running red lights in the city here. And he proceeded to do exactly what he had done 2 or 3 times before. You know, 1, 2, and on 3, he blew the red light. And as he was doing it, he says to me, and do you know your plates are expired, asshole? So he was running red lights with expired plates, driving my car. That's Eric in a nutshell. Well, Eric did well in my building. He was super sweet and polite with the old seniors there. But one guy hated his guts. Real racist guy. Who one day absolutely insulted Eric as much as he could. Said, "What are you doing here, boy? You don't belong here, boy." And Eric had been sitting on the curb having a cigarette, and as he came up out of his crouch to do what he describes himself as strong as an ox and a famous fighter who doesn't like to fight because he's got trauma around it, but people would egg him on and try to set it up for him to fight because they wanted to watch what he'd do. And the story he told was that as a teenager, he was a coward, but an uncle came back from the war and taught him to fight. So now he's a hell of a fighter. So he came up out of a crouch, and before he had a chance to demolish this shrimpy guy, a wonderful black man who lived in the building, there were only a couple of 3 black people in the building, headed him off, said, no, bro, they'll put you in jail. Come on, let's go. And Eric appeared in my apartment shaking like a leaf, so enraged, so humiliated. And I said, "We'll do something, Eric. Let's think. We'll complain to the management." I knew that was lame. "We'll destroy his reputation." Well, that happened automatically. And then I had what I swear was the voice for God in me. I had already had my spiritual awakening, and the voice for spirit was very active in me. I said, "I got it, Eric." He says, "Yeah, what we gonna do?" I said, not we. I got this one." "Yeah, what are you gonna do?" I said, "I'm gonna beat him up." And we both laughed hysterically because I'm like a skinny 70-year-old psychologist who's never thrown a punch in his life. And Eric says, "When was the last time you did that?" And I said, "Well, not in this lifetime, but I had a good feeling about this." And I did. And I cornered the little asshole when he came home from work in the parking lot. And it was a terrible fight, but I did land one. When the cops took my story, they took his story first. And when they took my story, I said, "It was a terrible fight. Nobody landed one. Nobody went down." And the lady cop says, "He says you hit him and he's got a red mark on his forehead." I said, "Yeah, really?" And she says, "Don't get excited. He's pressing charges." And I said, "I figured there'd be charges, but I got him. Now Eric won't have to do anything." Because he was watching out the 5th floor window, and if nothing happened, he'd probably feel like he had to finish the job. That was the coming of age for me. The next day I was driving down the road, and out of the blue I shook my fist and said, "I'm a fighter." And when one of the old biddies in my building said, "I hope you got that out of your system," I said, "I think the next time will be easier." And I've always felt like it would be, but there hasn't been a next time because I've learned how to intimidate people enough that they back off. Anytime someone tries to intimidate me, they get something they didn't expect. So if lady was to ask me, "Yeah, good start. What else have you done that's wild?" Well, I would say, well, a year of rambling around the high mountains of Appalachia. I had all kinds of adventures. I did start identifying with the cowboy lifestyle, especially the Lone Ranger, because as someone who was happy all the time himself, I said I had taken the Bodhisattva pledge, that I will not rest until all beings are at peace. And basically I drove around looking for people who needed help, but they always showed up, and I'd do what I could. I still survive on a Social Security check, which never makes it through the month. I'm always poor at the end of the month. But that first several months on the road, I had 4 deep pocket friends who would bail me out when I needed money. They'd give me regular infusions of cash. Tom, my buddy, gave me $5,000 to get out of my SUV into a camper van. But in the fall of 21, all 4 of them had reversals, and none of them could back me up financially anymore. So simply, like Robin Hood, rob from the rich and give to the poor, and I was poor, and the only way I could keep my mission afloat, I did wholesale shoplifting from Walmart, routinely came out of there. And I love frontline customer service people because that's all I did for 16 years in Asheville. So it wasn't phony when I would schmooze the customer service people while I was robbing the store blind, but I routinely came out between $100 and $300 worth of merchandise. I did some videos where I lined up the fruits of my labor. And then in New Orleans, where I got super, super happy, I love New Orleans, I had taken out a payday loan, I think in Indiana or Missouri or someplace, and paid it back. And they're usurers. They're Shylocks. They're, hit you with incredible interest. And their stick is they hire really lovely people to run the office. And so even though by law in Louisiana they had to read you some stuff that said don't do this on a regular basis, it's not a good way to run your finances, poor people, it became community. They liked the people in the office and they'd do it every month. So I went in to get my second payday loan in New Orleans, and as I was going through the paperwork I realized the only thing they do to secure this loan is they got to see the records of my Social Security check going in every month. And I just changed the bank it's going to. So this month, they are not going to get their money. And I came out of that office really happy and said, I could repeat this. I've got a window of a couple weeks where I could repeat this, and I did. 5 more times for a tune of $1,000. None of which made me rich, but it made it possible for me to keep going. Now, I was saying through South Texas that I was going to do DIY, that once I got to Mexico, I'd do DIY YouTube videos about how to steal from Walmart. I haven't yet. I think I should. None of it applies in Mexico because the security in Walmart in Mexico is private security guards with AK-47s, 2 or 3 of them or 4 of them around the store. That sure intimidates me. I've hardly stolen anything from Walmart. Few little things. I'm illegal in Mexico. I left Asheville. It was chaotic time. It was the first year of the COVID. I had changed my entire lifestyle. I had had these huge spiritual experiences that kept building on each other. I was hanging on for dear life with all the changes. Happy, happy, happy. But it was a wild time. So I kind of forgot that I had run a red light and that I had gotten a ticket for running a red light. And it turned out there was another moving violation that I had never received a citation about at all. I never knew I had been charged. I was in Louisville, Kentucky when I got a call from a Buncombe County sheriff saying, and I was moving so much that the court summonses never caught up with me. Buncombe County sheriff called me and said, you missed 2 court dates for moving violations. Your license has been suspended. And there's no way I could have fixed it without going back to Asheville, and I wasn't doing that. So because of that, I couldn't renew my plates. I couldn't renew my insurance. Couldn't renew my driver's license. And I spent a year in South Texas trying to figure out how to get across the border. And regardless of all the different things the websites would say or people would say about what you had need to get across the border, the only thing you really needed was current tags. It's the only thing they ever checked. And I got turned away once, and when I realized that nothing bad happened, they just sent me back, I said, well, I'm free to keep experimenting. So I got turned back a couple more times, tried McAllen, Texas, all along the Rio Grande Valley, 90% Latino, Little Mexico, my practice Mexico. I I slipped across at McAllen, big commercial site, way at the west end of the Rio Grande Valley. They were just too busy. They never checked the tags. And I didn't even have money to stay in Mexico, so I had to go back. But finally, I had been turned back at Brownsville / Matamoros, the infamous crossing, which does have cartel influence, and where a couple of Americans were kidnapped, and 4 of them kidnapped and 2 of them killed, a week before I was on that bridge being turned back. But where I got across was 30 miles west of there, Progreso, Texas, Nuevo Progreso, Mexico, the Good Times crossing, people going across for the cantinas, for cheap tequila, and for cheap dental and medical work, and just shopping. And I got across by lying my ass off. And the agent on the Mexican side, you can't bribe them anymore because they're all law enforcement, says you got bad tags, you can't cross. And something in me said, don't panic, this is not his final answer. And finally he said to me, so you're going across just for a couple hours, just to say you put your feet down in Mexico and take a couple of selfies? Yeah. And then you're going back to Westico, Texas, where you've got a house for the winter. Winter Texans are a big thing down there. That's a lot of the budget of a lot of those towns comes from winter Texans, who are, most of them, awful. They don't want to have anything to do with the Latinos. They take their RVs down there into gated RV parks and totally avoid the Latino population. Yeah, I got this house over in Westico. Well, okay, go for 2 hours, but then go back and don't attempt to cross again until you fix your tags. Thank you, officer. So 2 hours later, I was 100 miles south of the border. And I've had, I think, 11 or 12 visits from cops in Mexico, and they've overall been awesome, super professional, super friendly. And Mexican guys can't avoid kidding, so they always end up kidding. Only twice have they discovered the bad tags, and only once did it look like I was really, really in trouble, but finally they let me go. So, I'm going kayaking with them tomorrow, and I'll see her tomorrow. And I'm going to try to line up to see her after that. She says they're wrapping up their time with this operation for the winter. I don't know, it's something about the water changing. I couldn't understand why she was saying tomorrow's their last day. But I'm going to try to arrange more time to see her. And if she says, well, I'm not convinced you're wild enough to run with me, this is my little rehearsal here. Maybe I'll just... No, she mostly speaks Spanish. She won't want to... Looking at this video would not do the deal. I have to speak Spanish to her. All right, there we go. In a nutshell, 33 minutes. Those of you who hung in, thank you. Muchas gracias.